In the latest sign that Russiagate will literally never, ever end, Hillary Clinton had some thoughts that she was sharing with Nancy Pelosi about how we need a 9/11 commission-style report. Let's take a listen.
We learned a lot about our system of government over the last 4 years with a president who disdains democracy and, as you have said numerous times, has other agendas. What they all are, I don't think we yet know. I hope historically we will find out who he's beholden to, who pulls his strings. I would love to see his phone records to see whether he was talking to Putin the day that the insurgents invaded our capital. But we now know that not just him, but his enablers, his accomplices, his cult members have the same disregard for democracy. Do you think we need a 9/11 type commission to investigate and report everything that they can pull together and explain what happened?
I do.
I mean, what was the Mueller report? We had a whole entire multi-year investigation that tore the country apart for years and infected everyone apparently in the resistance liberal side with brainworms. And yet they want another investigation, another report. I also love how she throws out there this just completely baseless allegation that he was being directed by Putin on the day of the insurrection at the Capitol.
Well, that's the crazy part. Why can't it be enough that he just didn't do anything and incited a riot at the Capitol? Isn't that enough? Why do we have to throw Putin into the mix? It's he already did something really bad. As you point to, this is a brainworm at the highest order. I mean, the amount of just cognitive dissonance that it takes in order to think, not only does Trump do this terrible thing, but it has to be directed by Russia. He's plenty of bad on his own. And this is really scary because 9/11 style commission report, it's all part of the same, post 2001 playbook, which is that 9/11 style commission report. And then they can push whatever they want through that. What are the recommendations going to be? Same thing that Biden has already called for, a new domestic terror law. None of this has anything to do with the fact that we didn't have enough intelligence, that we didn't have the military and the manpower. I mean, you and I are literally at home because we can't go to our studio because of the amount of military occupation that is here in Washington. We have plenty of people. We're good. We don't need new laws. But this is really terrifying. I mean, it could be one of the biggest infringements of civil liberties in modern memory. And I think the backlash to something like this would just be immense and actually worse, way worse than what happened at the Capitol.
Well, there's a lot of directions that this ultimately heads in. I mean, first and foremost, just the fact that you're going to waste your time and your energy on some endless investigation. It's always investigations on top of investigations on top of investigations. I remember when Democrats rightly made a lot of fun of Republicans for how many millions of Benghazi investigations they had, how much taxpayer money and time was ultimately wasted chasing down that rabbit hole. And then they're ready to just go and do the exact same thing. But in addition to that, the potential consequences are really troubling, and we're already seeing some signs of it, because where do they always go with this? It's always more tech censorship. We've got to crack down even more. We've got to crack down on dissident voices. I mean, let's not forget that Bernie Sanders was accused of receiving Russian aid as well. So it's not like this is a uniformly good thing for Democrats or uniformly good thing for the left. This type of inquiry and the conclusions that those with power who want to expand their power are likely to reach are very damaging. Not to mention, as you point out, there's already chatter about new domestic terrorism laws that would add additional levels of potential surveillance tools and power to the executive branch. So yeah, it's a waste of time, but it's worse than a waste of time because it has incredibly troubling implications ultimately. And by the way, I mean, look, what has ultimately been the goal of Russiagate, very effectively, by the way, it's to avoid the Democratic Party having to do any sort of self-reflection, any sort of soul searching about their own failures. It can all just be Russia's fault. And it's every single story they take to the same place. This was another thing that was interesting that just happened over the weekend. So Parler, as part of that social media censorship and crackdown, was, of course, removed from the Google store, removed from the Apple store, and then Amazon pulled their web hosting services so that Parler just could not operate whatsoever. So what have they done? They've gone to try to get service wherever they possibly can. And now Parler is being hosted off of servers that are located in Russia. So rather than looking at this and going like, hey, maybe this wasn't like such an amazing thing to push Parler off of Amazon and into this like sketchier sort of like Russian server farm situation, they go, see, we told you they're nefarious. They're working with the Russians, and this proves that they're ultimately evil and bad, and we were right to censor them to start with. It's complete insanity.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's like you pull all of the U.S. infrastructure, private infrastructure away from Parler. And Parler's like, okay, well, we still need to exist, so we're going to have to go host our servers and try and route our traffic through Russia. And they're like, see, you're Russian. You're a Russian asset. It's just gaslighting at the highest order. And another point that I want to make here is very scary, which is that what does a 9/11 style commission report mean? Are you saying that Russia perpetrated a 9/11 style attack on the United States? Russia is not a bunch of dudes in caves in Afghanistan. This is a nuclear armed power. Are you saying that we're going to be like putting ourselves on war footing and implicating Vladimir Putin and the Russian government? This is worse than the Cold War, honestly, because of how many different threats that we face across the across the world. And then we're focusing in here on Russia. It has been the goal for a lot of people who have been pushing Russian basically hysteria from the beginning, is to incite some crazy geopolitical war between the Russians and the US. Of course, there is tension. I'm not saying that they're like good people or don't wish us ill. All of that can be true. Does that mean that it merits 9/11 style response, which is essentially what Hillary is saying? Absolutely not. That would be insane. And that's another part with...
I mean, to your point, look, they just imprisoned Alexei Navalny as the head of the opposition. They're like, no one's saying they're like great actors and they're amazing and they're our best buds. But the type of derangement around this issue has been completely insane and has served very effectively to avoid all accountability for Hillary Clinton being the primary person. I mean, it's not an accident that she is almost like the furthest out there in terms of her insanity on this issue, because if she doesn't have the Russian crutch, then all of a sudden people go, wait a second. You were the most proximate reason that Donald Trump ended up as president in the first place, right? You're the one who ran the terrible campaign and was a terrible candidate and lost to him and subjected us to 4 years of this monster. But nobody ever says that. Instead, they're like, oh, it was Putin's fault. It was the Bernie like memes on Facebook that Russia was putting up. It was all them. And so, yeah, she has a very vested interest in keeping people chasing down that rabbit hole instead of actually assessing what went wrong and how we ended up in this place.
Yeah, it'll just never end. And this is the latest example. And I hope to God that Biden and Pelosi don't go down this train. But since Pelosi's the one who literally said it, it's probably what's going to happen.
Very troubling. All right, more rising for you after this.